Newspapers. We've got The Sun's Martina Bett with us, as well as Politico's Bethany Dawson. Martina, Bethany, thanks very much for being with us. Let's crack on and take a look at this story on the front of the Sunday Telegraph. Martina, take us through this.
Yes, so this is the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, and she says that if she gets into power, she will reverse Keir Starmer's EU reset. So we know that on May 19th, there's going to be this big summit in London, and Keir Starmer is going to unveil this new Defence and Security Pact. More details about the deal have come out this weekend, and under which British soldiers could fight for the first time alongside EU troops, which is really interesting. But the deal will also pave way for the UK to sell food and agricultural products to the EU. And in return, the UK will offer EU fishermen greater access.
I was going to ask if the fishing thing has been...
Absolutely, which we know has been one of the sticking points in all Brexit negotiations throughout the years. They will also commit to a youth mobility scheme.
Against the migration thing that we've been talking about as well.
That's right, which is for under 30s to be able to come and study in the UK. And of course, it's been a little bit of a sticking point as well, because, of course, as we talked about earlier, we know that the Home Office wants to reduce net migration, and obviously this goes against it. But anyway, nothing will be set in this deal. It would just be, they would just commit to talk about it again in the next talks. Now, Kemi Badenoch says that she will reverse all of this. She is going to meet the EU envoy tomorrow, Pedro Serrano, and she will set out 5 tests. She doesn't want to see any backsliding on freedom of movement, which you know is one of the red lines for Keir Starmer's government, and also she says she doesn't want to see our fishermen being sold out to the EU. That's quite interesting, because this is a story in the Telegraph, and I was going through the comments. So,
dangerous thing to do.
And they did not like it. They kept saying, well, she will not get a chance to reverse any of this because she's not going to be leader by the time of the next general election. So,
I mean, is it just posturing? She's got to be seen to be talking tough, and I guess the Brexit word still.
It's really interesting because the Conservatives still don't have many policies, right? They're really committing to taking a very slow approach to building a policy platform, which means there are these massive vacuums of places where they do need to have a view on certain things. And when that happens, it comes out like this, which is quite harsh. It's quite big. And as you say, it's quite looking quite far ahead in the future, when already she's not been in post for long, but her MPs don't seem thrilled with her. I think the thing that's so interesting about this, if we think forward 5 years' time, say she is Prime Minister, our relationship with the EU, I think, would be so damaged if Keir Starmer does manage to even just discuss these things. As we've said, this isn't a deal that's set in stone. It is just conversations that haven't happened for a long time. And if those conversations happen, and maybe they do form an agreement, if Kemi Badenoch comes in and almost like Donald Trump style, day one, says that's all done with, that would be so damaging, I think, for our trade agreements, for our discussions with France, for example, about migration across the Channel. And I just think it's putting her party in a really interesting position. In
a position they perhaps don't need to be in at this point, really.
I don't think they even want them to be in.
Unless they're trying to fend off reform, which I guess will be part of this. But it does, I mean, even the reporting of it does put the UK, and especially the Conservative Party, in a really tricky spot, because how will Europe, who we've worked hard to try and gain the trust of again, be able to trust any future government with this in mind? Very challenging. Anyway, we'll see, as you say. Maybe she won't be there. Let's move on to this story. Speaking of reform, I mean, a lot of the sort of policies coming from either of the main parties is to see off reform. There's a report in the yesterday, I think it was, they've got a 10-point lead over Labour. And what's this that they're talking about here, Bethany?
So Reform have appointed council. They've appointed a legal team to shut asylum hotels in the councils that they're now running. There's a really big question around this as to whether that is legal. So they've appointed what at least the party is saying quite a senior legal team of King's Counsel to figure out a legal way to shut down asylum hotels. This is a really hot topic for many people, not just those that are supporting reform. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the concept of asylum hotels, whether that is sort of politically or just the cost of it. They cost an incredible amount of money, and the National Audit Office have recently said that the costs are set to triple. That will become an incredible amount of money, and it is an amount of money that the Labour Party is saying needs to come down. So Reform are sort of taking the lead in speeding through this process. Of course, we've got the white paper coming out tomorrow on migration, which will probably touch on things like asylum, hotels and accommodation. But Reform are sort of storming through to challenge that. I think one of the really interesting things here is this is the first big announcement they've had about how they're going to manage local government after winning quite a big slate. There's already really limited resources in local government, and a lot of those resources go to things like social care and special educational needs provision. If this is a sign that they're going to start putting a lot more resources from local government into things like tackling asylum accommodation and migration, there's a conversation about what's going to happen with those slightly more day-to-day issues that don't really make the headlines, but that affect people in such an important way.
I mean, they might argue that it would save local councils money, but the question that I would ask, and I'm sure Trevor will ask when he speaks to Richard Tice at 8:30, is what are you going to do with these people who are in these asylum hotels while their asylum process is being put through the system?
Just to grab a headline, you know, there's a clear attempt to tap into voters' frustration, and it does it quite well.
I think also it's how it could potentially save the taxpayer, but how much will it cost?
Yeah.
You know, in terms of court fees and things.
Somewhere else. All right, let's move on. Sticking with asylum hotels.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, this is another story that is going to raise eyebrows across the country for sure, especially on the eve of a major new migration crackdown. So it's been revealed that the man dubbed as Asylum King has become a billionaire, and thanks to the profits that he's made from housing asylum seekers. His name is Graham King. He's got a government contract, and in the last year, he's made his fortune has risen by 35%, and that's because, the explosion in wealth is directly tied to the rise in illegal migration. And according to the Sunday Times, he's going to join the ranks of Britain's billionaires.
Yeah, he's joining their rich list, which they're publishing next week.
Absolutely. And, this will cause a lot of fury because, it comes at a time where taxpayers are footing a ballooning bill for asylum costs, and others are making billions off the crisis. So it's definitely not going to go down well for people reading this. And, there's been a surge in illegal migration. We're talking about figures that, over 11,000 people have crossed the Channel, and 138,000 people have made asylum applications. So, as we mentioned earlier, the Labour government really needs to get a grip on this if they want to fight reform and win the next election.
Beth, I'm not going to get you to comment on that because we haven't got loads of time and I want to get through the next few stories, if that is all right with you. We've got 3 minutes left to go. And this is the next story here. Boris Johnson, Bethany, why don't you tell us what the reporting is here, and then I'll tell you what Andrew Griffith said to me the other day when I spoke to him about exactly this.
Well, this reporting is saying that Boris Johnson is expecting reform to implode, leading to a lot of people looking for someone to vote for. And he thinks once that happens, once the party falls, he can go back to the Conservative Party, win it all back and fix it again.
Yep. Of course he can. Look, I mean, it was just earlier in the week, which was where I spoke to Andrew Griffith about it. On Thursday, he had an interview where he backed Kemi Badenoch, and I put it to Griffith, it's like a football chairman backing the manager that says, you're in a great position, you've got all of our support, and then next week they're sacked. And it seems from this reporting as if he's looking for the job again. Well,
it wasn't a thing in the last government that the minute somebody said, I have full confidence in insert politician here, they were gone the next day. Yeah. So maybe we're back to that position and we'll see Boris at the helm again.
But it speaks to what we were saying earlier about Kemi's position being
quite fragile, especially after the local elections. I've spoken to plenty of Tory MPs that do not like the direction the Conservative Party is heading in.
And would like to see him
perhaps,
back.
Absolutely. And it mentions the More in Common poll that concluded that under Mr Johnson, the Tories would beat reform by 3 points.
Well, isn't that interesting? I wonder. Fascinating stuff, and definitely, of course, one that we will watch and keep an eye across. A story here in The Observer, Martina, that I'm sure many people, me included, will be very interested in.
Absolutely, it's very interesting. So there's this new group of youth centres. Basically, they're determined to turn the tide of the lure of online influencers for especially young boys, young males. They've got weekly sessions. They're taught to talk about relationships, sex, everything that goes through their minds. They need to turn their phones. And it's a really interesting topic because I went a couple of weeks ago to the launch of a report by the Centre for Social Justice, in it was called, again, The Lost Boys. And he was saying how basically men and young boys are failed in lots and lots of different areas of life, from male-dominated industries collapsing, role models are no longer there. I think the Labour government actually is introducing a rule that they want to recruit more male teachers in primary and secondary schools because there are no male teachers. So these boys have got no one to look up to. And a very interesting thing that this report talked about is that lots of young men are turning to AI chatbots for
friendship.
For friendship, for girlfriends, and also for therapy, because some are struggling with their mental health, and it's incredibly concerning.
It really is a really scary moment for that generation. Let's hope that they can have the positive influence that is needed. Bethany, I'm not about to come to you, run out of time, but Martina, Bethany,
thank you.
really nice to talk with you this morning. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Sundays, and do stay with us here on the Breakfast programme. We'll be right back after this short break with our top stories.
Jubilation in the streets